Did you know that it could cost almost $1 billion to host an F1 race? For starters, almost $7 million is needed to build a racetrack. That's some crazy amount of money going down. You might want to argue why it would cost so much since it's just a road track, cars, and a bunch of spectators. Well, in reality, it could cost billions. But what exactly makes it that expensive? Let's find out. To begin with, creating a circuit is expensive. A typical racetrack in the US will cost at least $7 million to construct. According to a study, two-lane pavement typically costs around $100,000 per mile. Although two lanes aren't quite broad enough for a racetrack, keep that in mind. Therefore, plan on spending at least $200,000 per mile to construct a racetrack with 4 lanes. You would want a safe track and other facilities that would appeal to your target market, so that your drivers may drift sideways without leaving the road. It's pretty simple to comprehend how a straightforward 4-mile paved racetrack would cost more than $1 million, and that's even before purchasing the property and keeping the pavement in good condition. Additionally, keep in mind that pavements have a finite lifespan. Therefore, you cannot afford to have poor construction that leads to potholes on your racetrack. According to a 2017 Forbes research, renting grandstands for over 80,000 seats would cost over $14 million, while renting safety barriers, fences, and pit structures would cost more than $8 million apiece. An additional $6 million is needed for all the offices, cars, electricity, and water supplies, with an additional $4.5 million for other expenses like cranes or the necessary fire extinguishers every 15 meters. The cost of building a racetrack will vary depending on several factors. A large radio-controlled racing track will be more expensive to build than a small racetrack for cars. Drag strips consisting of mud or clay are less costly than paved ones. The cost will depend on several factors, including the size and location of the track. Although some are half a mile long and others 1/8 of a mile, the majority of racetracks in the United States are 1/4 of a mile long, and they are mostly constructed from concrete or asphalt. At the very least, you'll need 40 acres of land for a 1/4 mile drag strip just to have room for the track itself. You'll also need more track space so the cars can slow down after the race. It would be best to have at least an additional half-mile runoff for a 1/4 mile drag strip. You may also want a racetrack that's at least 3/4 of a mile long to handle this 1/4 mile drag strip and the half-mile deacceleration lane. That equates to a minimum of 120 acres of land. Of course, this accounts for the area the track will require. You'll need to purchase more property if you wish to add parking, a spectator area, an office, shop or restaurant space, restrooms, or a garage to store vehicles. Land clearance expenses typically range from $1,500 to $3,000 per acre for moderately forested areas. Costs per acre for more densely forested regions might range from $3,500 to $6,700. The price quickly rises when you add those figures to the 120 acres of land you'll want for a track. You must construct the road itself after securing and clearing the terrain. Typically, they're constructed from clay, asphalt, dirt, or concrete. The appropriate material for the task will depend on the vehicles that is intended to drive on the track and how it will be used. A road made of asphalt typically costs between $70 and $170 per linear foot. It would cost between $370,000 and $900,000 for a 1-mile, 2-lane racetrack. That number may double if more lanes are added. Most racetracks utilize asphalt as their preferred material, but creating a section of pavement that can withstand the abuse of fast-moving racing cars requires a different construction technique than that used to pave normal roads. Whether you decide to pave your track with concrete or asphalt, you need a budget of at least $200,000 for the job. Styrene butadiene styrene, or SBS, is a unique polymer similar to what is used in styrofoam drinking cups and is found in the asphalt used to construct racetracks. Increasing the asphalt's melting point with SBS keeps the road safe even in the warmest weather. Therefore, the track won't start to degrade or melt while it bakes in the scorching heat and is battered by hot, sticky racing tires. Dangerous circumstances may arise if this technique is not followed. Multiple layers of pavement are also used to strengthen the track's edges. This stops the erosion and cracking you'll notice along the borders of roadways. In reality, many layers of asphalt must be used to create the complete track. Builders would often begin with a thick foundation layer, add the next 2 levels one at a time, and make sure the pavement was smooth after each addition. And a racecourse must be level and devoid of bumps or potholes that can put a high-speed car in a dangerous scenario. A Grand Prix typically costs approximately $40 million annually to host and generates over $700 million for Formula One. Older courses with a longer history on the calendar, including Monza, Spa, and Silverstone, typically pay less. Newer circuits must compete for a spot on the schedule and pay significantly more for the right to host. These costs can increase by up to 5% for each year of the contract, depending on how long the contract is for, making it a very pricey enterprise. Smaller nations are progressively priced out of the calendar as a result. However, as F1 is anxious to add Sin City to the calendar, the new Las Vegas race, which will make its debut on the schedule next year, won't be forced to pay a hosting fee. Middle Eastern nations are among the largest payers. The championship's organizers paid racing circuits to use their facilities in the early years of Formula One. However, things have changed, and circuits now routinely pay expensive race fees to be included in the F1 schedule, as well as the governments of those nations. Track owners don't seem discouraged by this, as new circuits are lined up to commemorate the Grand Prix. The current number of days on the calendar is anticipated to increase significantly during the next few years. A race in Las Vegas will be on the calendar in 2023, and after previously being postponed due to the World Cup, a race will take place in Qatar. F1 is also interested in South Africa, which may host a race as early as next year for the first time since 1993. And how much is the Formula One circus paid to each circuit? Although a lot depends on where you are, it shouldn't be shocking that the Middle Eastern nations are among the top payers. According to figures made public by Racing News 365 earlier this year, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Azerbaijan are each spending $55 million to have a race in their city. Abu Dhabi and Hungary pay $40 million, and Bahrain pays $45 million. This year, the program is being resumed by Singapore and Australia. According to reports, they are paying F1 $35 million, with Canada, a different returning host nation, paying $30 million yearly. Surprisingly, despite the hefty expenditures, an F1 race may result in a significant economic boom for the region by generating cash from tourism, since around 53% of racegoers come from outside the country. The money spent by fans and teams at hotels supports neighborhood businesses, and broadcasting contributes to media coverage of a community, particularly in city sites that highlight its attractions. The race at COTA generated an estimated $2.8 billion in revenue for the Austin metro region between 2012 and 2015. Unfortunately, it's not always successful. India and South Korea didn't stay on the calendar for long because the advantages didn't show up. Silverstone was also in danger of being lost only a few years ago because the host costs weren't tenable. F1 organizers will have to dig deep into their coffers to maintain themselves on the schedule as the market for the sport expands and more nations express an interest in hosting. No doubt, there's a lot of money put into hosting Formula One races. Are Formula One events worth the high price tag they carry? Comment below.